Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now, a question I get asked often is, can I restore a Death Star droid? So I finally found one that was in a really rough condition and I thought I would give it a go. So really this is another episode of Can This Figure Be Saved? In front of me you can see a few Death Star droids. The two either side are ones that I have in my army collection of Imperial stormtroopers and whatnot. And the one in the middle is one that I picked up fairly recently. As you can see, he's been through the walls. The chrome is pretty heavily worn on him, and obviously someone at some point has broken a leg off and tried to repair it by sticking a metal pin through. As you can see, there's actually a hole on this side of the leg. You can see that the pin has actually been pushed right the way through, and it even comes out the other side of the leg that's not broken off. So somehow we've got to reattach that. So really the first things I'm going to have to do is try and work out how to reattach that leg. I don't really want to take this figure apart any more than it currently is, because they have a rivet in the back of them, and also the plastic that they're made of is quite brittle and does tend to crack. So I'm going to have to try and work out some way to reattach this just using the leg joint there. So first thing, let's remove this pin. I think it's just a case of a pair of pliers and gently twisting. Yeah, and there you go, that's the pin removed. So now we have the leg. It actually looks like the leg, not only has it been pinned, someone's tried to melt it as well. So probably been set fire with a match or something like that. So I think really what we're going to have to do, but it sort of fits in place. I think I might have to fashion something out of Lego to fix that, and also to mend this hole just to fill it and then sort of sculpt it back. But the first thing I want to do is to remove the chrome, the remaining chrome that's on this figure. It is pretty worn. So I've had a look online, and a few people have suggested to me ways to do this. And the first way I tried, I've got a remains of a C-3PO that I thought I would try it on first before trying it on the figure I want to fix. They've suggested just household bleach. So I put the body of a C-3PO in household bleach and left it for 24 hours, and I have to say it did nothing. The figure came out just as good as it went in. So the household bleach for me didn't work. The next suggestion was oven cleaner, and I gave that a go, and I have to say that worked much better. Here you can see the remains of a C-3PO body that I put in some oven cleaner, and it's taken off about 90% of the chrome. There's still a few little bits left on. I only left this in the oven cleaner for an hour, and the chrome originally on this was pretty good, so it's worked pretty nicely. So I think the next thing to do then is to place this poor little guy in oven cleaner for as long as it takes to remove the remnants of this chrome, and we'll see what it looks like after that. So I sprayed the oven cleaner into a glass jar. I'm just using Mr. Muscle oven cleaner, the stuff that you can buy from most supermarkets, and then dropped the figure in it. You do have to be quite careful with this stuff, as it is very caustic and can hurt your hands. As you can see, I didn't wear gloves, which was stupid on my part. I should have worn rubber gloves to protect myself, and I will do in future. After leaving the figure in the oven cleaner, I left it in for about 2 hours. This is the result, as you can see here. The figure itself now, pretty much all of the chrome was gone. It did take longer than I thought. After about 20 minutes, I'd say 50% of the chrome was off, but it took a lot longer for some areas to sort of fully be removed. So it does take a little while, but as you can see, that actually is looking quite nice now. You know, quite a clean figure. And now what we've got to do is try and work out a way to save this leg. So let's have a look at that. Right, so I think I have a plan now. Obviously the peg on this leg is quite badly damaged. It's been melted and burnt, and it's got a hole through the middle of it. So I think I'm actually just going to cut that off, and we need to replace that. Then I can fill in this hole on the left side of the leg. Also I need to fill in the hole on this side of this leg, but that should be straightforward. So what we've got to do is replace this joint here. Now originally I was going to think that I could use a bit of Lego like I've previously used, because these sort of Lego Technic joints are quite good, but it turns out I did cut one just the right sort of size. It's not quite deep enough. There's not quite a sort of a wide enough gap in the groin area there to fit that. So what I've done is gone sort of slightly down a different route, which is the little grey pegs, as you can see here, are just a little bit too small to fit in, but with a bit of tinkering I've chopped this one down, as you can see here, made it slightly more tapered, and using a small bit of rubber tubing. Now I have quite a lot of this rubber tubing. This comes from fish tank. It's the sort of stuff that you use to run the air through filters, so it's pretty cheap. You can buy sort of lengths of a metre of this for a couple of quid. I've got some small stuff here which just happens to be the similar diameter to this little grey peg. So if I just push that onto the end there, that makes that peg pretty much the right diameter to go in this hole, and also it makes it fit quite firmly. So if I just push that in like so, I can push it on the side of my work desk here. You can see that that fits quite nicely into the sort of leg hole there, and you should be able to rotate it because it's not stuck in. So although it will be firmly in, you will be able to rotate it. So then the next plan is to attach this peg to the leg. So hopefully I think that should work. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll cut this off and see if we can attach this peg to the top part of this leg and see what happens. So first up, I've got to chop off the burnt remnants of this peg. So I'm just going to use a knife here and slowly chip away at it. It's probably fairly brittle, yeah, so just chop that down, and we'll get it as flush and as flat as possible. With that now chopped off, and I've got it as flush as I can, I just want to hold it up against the figure to make sure it sort of sits quite nicely, which it does. So next step then is to fit this little peg. So I think the way to do that is I'm going to drill a hole in here. Obviously there's not that much sort of depth to this, but I reckon I can drill it small enough that I can then attach this by just I'll trim this down, make it a little bit shorter, and then fit that into the leg there, and that should work quite nicely. So hopefully that shouldn't go wrong, but if it does, we'll see what we can do to fix it. After a fair amount of dremeling there, you can see I've cut quite a neat little hole in there, and by just I've obviously had to shorten the little Lego peg there, but by shortening that I've now got a peg that fits quite nicely into the top of the Death Star droid leg there. So I think next thing to do is to glue that in place, and then we can sort of offer it up to the figure and see if it still fits nicely. So I'm actually just going to use a little bit of super glue on this because I've managed to make this a fairly tight joint, and hopefully the super glue should hold it quite nicely. If it doesn't, I may swap to a different glue, but let's initially start with that. So just going to liberally put some super glue in there, like so, and then we can put the peg in place and hold it till it sets. The glue has now had time to set. You can see that's held in pretty rigidly. Still got the little hole there to fill on either leg, but the little peg looks pretty good. So I'm just going to put the little bit of plastic tubing back over the modified Lego pin like that, and then we can see about inserting it into the droid's leg, and we'll see what happens. Well, that is pretty good actually. I'm quite pleased with that. It obviously fits quite nicely. You can still rotate the leg. It does actually come out because obviously there's no way of sort of holding it in place, but it means that you can still pose it, and it doesn't look too bad. I think for display purposes that's not going to be a bad fix. Let's see if he stands up. Let's see other. Yeah, and he does stand up, so that's pretty good as well. So to fill the two small holes, I'm actually just going to use some decorator's cork. I know there are probably better things for filling with, but I tend to just use what I have around the house rather than spending money on stuff that I'll only use on one job. So a bit of this decorator's cork seems to work quite nicely. Then I just use a little screwdriver or something like that to sort of push it into the hole and try and make it look the right shape, and I can sand this down afterwards with a bit of sort of emery paper or something like that. If you have obviously modeller's filler and stuff like that, it's obviously better to use, but I don't tend to have that stuff lying around, so you can just use whatever you have in your toolbox or in your shed. It seems to work just as well. With the filler all dry, I can see that it doesn't actually look too bad now. The little holes have covered pretty well actually. The one on this side is really good because it's just sort of in a little hidden area. So next job is to sort of re-chrome this. Now, the guys over at Retro Blasting used an airbrush and some special chrome spray. I don't have an airbrush, and I know a lot of people don't, so I'm just going to try and use some of this. This is Plasticoat fast drying chrome spray. I'm hoping that this does a sort of reasonable job. I've used this on some Micronauts heads previously, and they've actually not looked too bad. So I'm going to give this a go on this figure. Now, obviously, I haven't taken this figure apart. I can obviously remove this leg, so I will spray that leg separately, and the rest of the body is all going to be together. So I may have a few problems around the joints. The problem with these Death Star droids is you can't use the boil and pop method on them because it's made of the same quite hard, brittle plastic. So the only way to get them apart is to actually sort of crack the seam, and that can cause much more damage than I like really on doing figures like this. So I think I'm just going to risk it and spray it and see, you know, at the end I might be able to just sort of use a knife just to cut around the seams just to free up the arms, and we'll see what happens. It may go horribly wrong. Let's go and find out. And here's the figure after spraying. As you can see, the chrome's not done too badly, and I was a little bit worried that the arms would stick in place, but as you can see, they do move quite freely, as does the head. The silver sort of chrome finish isn't too bad. It looks a little bit more like the sort of modern release of the Death Star droid, which is a bit more of a duller colour. If I compare it to an original Death Star droid, which I have here, you can see that's much lighter and much shinier. So that chrome spray is all right, but it's not a great match for the original. If someone has suggestions on how I can sort of re-chrome this in a better way, then do drop me a line, because I don't really know a great deal about this sort of chroming stuff. This is the first thing I've tried. It's all right, but I'm sure there's probably a better way to do it. So the last thing I need to do is just to repaint the little black bits that are on the arms here and on the eyes. So I'm just going to use some Humbrol black paint to do that, and that'll be about as much as I can do on this figure. So let's get that done. To paint the black, I'm going to use some Humbrol number 21. This is Humbrol normal sort of acrylic paints that you can pick up at most model shops, and 21 is a gloss black. Really, it's just going to be a case of carefully painting, well, as carefully as I can, painting the eyes and the shoulder bits back in place. Obviously, the original ones were printed on, so it's going to be quite hard to recreate that, but I'll do the best I can. And so here we have it. This is my finished Death Star droid. Can you tell which one it is? Of course you can. It's this guy here. He's a slightly darker shade of silver, and the chrome really isn't quite as shiny as some of the other original ones I have here. But overall, I'm actually pretty pleased with how it came out. I think I will continue to look to see if there's a better way of chroming it. And if anyone does have any suggestions on a better way that I can chrome this, that is easy to do, something that doesn't require airbrushes and all that sort of stuff, then do get in touch, because I'd be happy to have another go at this. But I think considering how bad and how broken the original figure was, the fact that his leg had snapped off and had been stuck on with a metal pin, it's actually quite impressive how good he looks considering the state he was to start with. So I think that is another figure saved. It's not the best figure I've ever saved, but it's certainly good enough to go into my sort of army building Imperial Army in the background, and it will look quite nice sort of featured with all the other stormtroopers and whatnot sort of hanging around. So I think it's a figure saved. It's not the best job I've done, but it's certainly not bad. Hope that's been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.